You start the recording?
I did, yeah. Baba informed Mehra, who agreed as it would not only help Baba, but in Meherabad there was no proper paths on which to ride such a fine animal. The other two horses from Bilar were taken to Meherabad, and at Baba's suggestion, Sarosh was able to get another mare for Mehra. Baba then permitted the same women as before to ride. A makeshift Tata stable was erected in their compound, and Irene appointed the groom. Horses were almost my religion when I was younger, Irene stated. And according to Mani, whatever you know when you come to Baba, he uses. Well, let me just mention that we're at the top of page 216.
Yes.
Besides Irene's horse, which she called Malkajan, Mani's pony, and Mara's new mare, there was also a fox-colored horse. It had a rash down its back, and Baba told Irene to wash it with buttermilk. The women rode every morning inside a Tata corral built in the field behind the kitchen. Rano was ordered to stand at one end and someone else at the other, while Mera rode back and forth between them, with Meru running alongside her. Baba himself helped Mera on and off the horse and stood nearby watching. The riding sessions did not last long, however, as Baba was planning to move the ashram to Lahore, and he gave the horses away before they left. That was the end of that, said Mera, but she added, in appreciation for the opportunities she had had to ride again, Baba was so sweet to give us the chance to ride.
Do you want to read the sidebar?
Oh, I read it.
Oh, okay.
Aw, prod on the calf. Adorable. Baby cows are so cute. Upper Maribad, 43, 1943.
Beautiful picture of Baba. Dog
Six
days.
dog days. On Sunday, 4 July 1943, Mir Baba and the men and women Mandali traveled by train to Lahore in northern India. They had stopped there briefly in March 1941 on their way to Quetta in the blue bus, and the weather had been pleasant then. May and June had been so hot in Meherabad that the women were happy to be leaving, thinking that they would be escaping the sticky heat. But on the way, it became hotter and hotter. When they halted in Delhi, Keki Desai's family came to the train station and Mera recalled. The women from amongst them came to our compartment. They were very hospitable. They had brought ice cold lemonade, which we appreciated. They asked us where we were going, and we said Lahore. Lahore? They asked, so surprised. It is so hot there. This is the start of summer there now. There is no rainfall and so much heat. We were shocked. I remembered visiting Lahore as a child and had good memories of it. I didn't realize it would be so hot. We were banking on having a nice time in a beautiful city, and now they were saying it was so dry there. We had been trying to escape the heat of Meherabad. It was like going out of the frying pan into the fire. Whenever the group changed trains at railway stations, the women stayed together to protect Mehera, one in front, two at the back, and one on either side. They walked together briskly, making their way through the crowded platforms as they shepherded Mehera on and off the trains. Mani again, scroll down, please, Tina. Mani again cut out and pasted black paper on a pair of sunglasses so that Mehera was protected from inadvertently seeing any man. Almost blinded, Mehera was guided through the crowd by holding on to Mani's elbow. Once, Baba gave Rano the order not to touch men. But when the train stopped at a very crowded station, he also told her to go to the men's compartment and deliver an important message. Rano gazed in perplexity at the packed platform. How could she possibly venture outside through the teeming crowd and avoid touching any man? Nonetheless, she wrapped her arms around herself, making herself as thin as possible, and started repeating, Baba, 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 I'm not touching anybody. If they're touching me, it's not my fault. She weaved in and out among the crowd to the men's compartment and safely returned. Krishna Nair, a boy of 18, was also sometimes sent by the men Mandali to deliver messages to Baba, who was sitting in the women's compartment. This was the only time Krishna ever saw Mehera. Usually, after delivering the message, Baba told him to leave. But on the train to Lahore, Krishna stayed in their compartment to guard the luggage. He talked with Baba, but not directly to the women. Baba was always saying, Mehera is the only real lover, he recalled. She had no personal wish. If you had something and gave it to Baba, she felt more happy. She didn't want it for herself. Once they reached Lahore, the 18 women with Baba were divided into two groups and stayed in two separate bungalows. In Baba's bungalow, located in an area called Garden Town, were 7 women: Mehera, Mani, Meru, Kitty, Rano, Margaret, and Walu, as well as their maidservant Lakshi and Mitu the parrot. In the second bungalow, located about 200 yards away, were 11 women: Khorshid, Naja, Kadi, Sunamasi, Mansari, Saltoon, Dowla, Pilamai, Silla, Carmen Masi, and Irene, along with their maid Tara and little Jangu. After a few days, however, Naja was told to move to Baba's bungalow. Khorshid had been helping Mehera in Baba's personal work, but when they moved to Lahore, she was told to look after Jangu exclusively. Mehera then did Baba's personal work alone, assisted sometimes by Meru. Baba and the first group's bungalow in Garden Town was a newly built house belonging to a wealthy family, which had been procured after much difficulty. It was a beautiful place, however, located 7 miles outside the city. Fronting the house was a grand portico with large arches, flower pots, and a fountain. It was a lovely house, Mehera confirmed. in a newly started township of mostly wealthy people. You had to cross a bridge over a canal each day to go to town. Water came from the irrigation canal and flooded the compound. The sandy soil would absorb it, so the houses had nice gardens. There was a beautiful garden and trees. The soil was fertile. Baba told us the gardener was not allowed inside the compound, so all of us could do a bit of gardening in the mornings, which I loved. Mara continued. The other house Baba rented was across the Maidan, open ground. Our food came from there, cooked by Katie. There was ice cold water from the tube wells, which we drank with lunch and served Baba also. Although the women's food came from the other house, Mara was cooking for Baba in Lahore with the help of Tara, their servant from Meherabad, who brought burning coals from the other house for Mara to cook on. The nice thing about Lahore, though, Mara continued, was that even though we felt so hot, we also felt ravenously hungry. Why? I don't know. Baba had only tea for breakfast, but the women ate well 3 times a day, rice and dal or curry with a vegetable for both lunch and dinner. They even had toasted buns with their breakfast and afternoon tea. These were sent by Pilamai's niece, who was nicknamed Baby Pirin, even though she was married and had 6 children. The niece's husband had opened a restaurant in town and sent cookies and seed buns with raisins. And the sidebar says, Baba permitted Baby Perrin to visit a few times. Eva, you're ready to read, right?
Sure. Maybe not. Okay, yeah. Is it here for his own reasons? Is that where I start?
That's a pretty good guess, since that's
Okay.
all that.
I don't see the participants.
Oh, you don't get to, I don't think, because you're on a laptop.
For his own reasons, Baba never visited the women in the second group at the other bungalow, and they were told not even to look in the direction of Garden Town. If a message needed to be sent from Mehera's group to the other, it went through Kitty, Reno, or Margaret. The women from Mehera's group visited the women in the other house once a week, but there was to be no discussion of Baba's plans or his work. The other women could visit Garden Town on Sundays also if Baba was not present. With the political situation in India deteriorating, Baba's thoughts appeared to be on the future partition of India, which he had been predicting, and the division of the women mandali into 2 distinct groups could have signified this. Baba also revealed that an incident involving Margaret and a mad dog represented his working in this area. It began with Baba ordering Margaret to obey Mehera. The word obey was normally never used in reference to Mehera, Margaret explained. We had only to keep her happy, not to upset her. She did not give orders. The only time she did to me personally was in Lahore, when Baba came out for the must tours. Baba sent for me and asked, will you do something for me? Usually it was in the form of an order, not a request. So I was surprised. Baba was very gentle with me. I said, "Of course, Baba. I mean, there was no question. While I'm away, will you do exactly what Mehera tells you if she gives you an order?" I said, "Yes, Baba." So it wasn't a usual thing, but we were under Baba and he asked me to do that. Well, Mehera gave me no orders until this black dog came along, sick. Usually we would always feed stray dogs. This time Baba said no. But Mehera asked, couldn't we feed the black dog? Then Baba said, yes, on condition that Margaret bathes it. She asked me whether I would bathe it. It was an awful looking thing, and I wasn't particularly anxious to touch it. I did because she asked me. That was the only time I had a direct order to obey Mehera. Sitting in the moonlight on the porch that night, Baba called Margaret and embraced her. He said, now I'm going to make you happy. Soon after, a brown dog came. Baba pointed it out and said, that dog is mad. He ordered Dr. Nilu to have it destroyed, but it had already bitten the black dog, though they did not know it. On the morning of 1 October, the black dog bit Margaret on the wrist and knee. Baba came to Margaret's aid and then called Krishna. Baba pointed out the mad dog, telling him to take the dog 20 miles away. Only after great difficulty did Krishna manage to capture the rabid animal. He did not think he could drag it for 20 miles. So Baba amended the order to 11 miles. Krishna led the dog outside of Lahore to a small pond. And when the dog's mouth touched the water, it died. When Krishna returned, he asked Baba why he had made him go to all that trouble. Why take the dog 11 miles away just for it to die? Baba told him to take a stick and draw a line on the ground. Erasing that line with his foot, Baba had him draw another line. Then he said, in the future, India will be divided into 2 countries, India and Pakistan. This will be the boundary line between the two. 4 years later, at the time of partition, a dispute did arise over whether the boundary line between the 2 countries should be 20 or 11 miles from a certain point. Mehera applied potassium permanganate on Margaret's wrist and knee.
Pomegranate.
Pomegranate? Okay. Let me see.
Perman-
Permanganate.
Okay. I lost my place here.
Yeah, I think you're right. Pomegranate.
Okay.
Permanganate, potassium permanganate.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, permanganate on Margaret's wrist and knee. But Margaret still had to undergo the prescribed course of injections against rabies. On the blue bus journey to Quetta 2 years before, Baba had asked Margaret if she would die for him, and she very well could have now if she had gotten rabies by following Mehera's order to care for the black dog. But Margaret said the other house didn't see Baba, which was very sad for them. I was thankful when the dog bit me, as I got to stay with Baba and the girls longer. I wasn't sent to the other house to fight with those there. It was so dull, nothing to do but be hot and argue with each other. The housekeepers were all right. They had something to occupy their time. I, I had the dogs and animals to look after once or twice. Otherwise, there was nothing to do, and Baba would disappear on must trips. So I was glad when the dog bit me, and it provided me with an excuse to join Baba longer. Sorry, I lost my place here.
I don't know where you were. I looked away for a minute.
Yeah, I pinched it to make it bigger, and then it moved. How about here? Monty remembered Margaret was wonderful about obeying Baba's orders without question, even in a simple or insignificant way, or something that seemed not to make sense. Margaret wouldn't wonder why. She would just do it. She never questioned. When someone asked her whether they meditated in the ashram, she said no. When asked what she did, she replied, "If Baba told me to pick up a stone, I picked it up. If he told me to put it down, I put it down. If he told me to pick it up again, I did." This described Margaret's obedience without a thought. This is what Baba wanted. I have never known her to question or even to suggest another way of getting around something Baba has told her to do. For instance, once Baba arranged a bus trip to the Lahore Museum when the temperature outside was well over 100 degrees. They were to visit a cemetery also. Margaret asked whether she could stay at home in her room. Baba said, "After I arranged a treat for you." And sidebar, the Lahore Central Museum is considered the best museum in Pakistan, housing a large collection of Mughal and miniature paintings, rare manuscripts, and priceless statues of Buddha in various poses. Margaret went and was sick at the cemetery. "If I go in, I'll never come out," she thought. "How convenient for Baba," she noted drolly. "He can bury me here." But in she went. Margaret's rapport with Baba was strongly linked to humor, Monty continued. Margaret would sometimes go blank. "When I sit before Baba, I go blank," she would say. Baba would be explaining something. Suddenly, he would look around and ask Margaret a question, a simple thing like, "What's the time?" or "How's your health?" She would just stare at him, absolutely blank. Baba would turn to us and say, "Look at her. She's so clever. She's so famous as a dancer. She can teach this, and she's so good at that. She is so learned, but she can't understand a simple thing I asked her. I asked, 'How's your health?' And she does this." And Baba would imitate her stare. Margaret would just laugh. "Darling, what can I do? I can't help it. When I sit before you, I go blank." "You are fortunate," Baba replied. "That's how it should be when you're with me, not cluttered without any thought." Then Baba would tease her again, tell her something, and watch her look blank. When the Westerners were with Baba in Portofino, Italy, in 1933, the conversation had turned to previous incarnations that some of them might have had. Margaret thought the whole thing ridiculous and remarked facetiously, "Baba, I do not want anything from any past. What I want in the present is to be your fiance. I would like to
Ah,
be fiance, but I will never ask for marriage. I will remain your fiance forever. Baba had been delighted with Margaret's attitude, and a few days later, he took an Egyptian scarab ring from his pocket and slipped it on her finger. Margaret never took it off. Because of her deep love for Mehera, however, Margaret requested that this incident not be related to Mehera to avoid even the possibility of causing Mehera discomfort. Although Margaret had voiced her desire to Baba in jest, she was concerned that it might cause Mehera to have thoughts that someone was usurping her position while she was not present. The incident was kept strictly private between Baba and Margaret, although later Margaret signed her letters to Baba as your fiance.
ah,
Elizabeth, too, was quite reluctant to speak about Mehera. Of all those interviewed for this book, Elizabeth was by far the most reticent to narrate details about her life in the ashram, and especially about Mehera. Why? Because for so many years, the women's side was kept absolutely private. Elizabeth was so accustomed to Mehera being in seclusion, she was not sure it was permitted to speak of such intimate moments, even then in the 1970s, and she certainly was not comfortable doing so.
there's a picture of Margaret and Baba.
Wow, he's so handsome.
Mm. And Ralph, would you like to take over? I don't know if Ralph is with us. You want to continue, Eva?
Sure. 65, swimming pools. Although Margaret was happy to be staying in the bungalow in Garden Town with Baba, she did not get along especially well with Rano. At Meherabad, these two were at constant loggerheads, always quarreling and arguing over insignificant things, and their differences continued at Lahore. Rano and I had a special antipathy. Antipathy, thank you. Margaret explained. If I said something was blue, she would say it was black. Rano was frightfully argumentative, which Mehera didn't like. One time, just to be nasty, I remember playing a trick on Rano. We were in Lahore, Rano and I sharing a room for some months. It was dark, curtains closed. No sun or light came in because it was hot. In one corner was a mirror. The room had a very small bathroom, a luxury at that. We were sharing chores. My job was to scrub the wretched stone floor every day and clean the mirror. Her job was to keep the bathroom clean. So one night we were sitting outside in the courtyard. Baba was there with Mehera, Mani, and so on. Along comes Rano, and she's shaken. Margaret hasn't polished the mirror, she said. I'd gone over it with a cloth. So what? I didn't carry a hang. We couldn't see ourselves, and it was just as well we didn't. I don't know what we looked like in that heat, with no makeup or anything. Rano said, "She's a terrible woman. She hasn't cleaned the mirror." I wasn't going to be nice, I said. "You're in charge of the bathroom. You haven't cleaned it properly." "I clean it every day," she protested. "Come with me and see," I said. Baba was so interested to see what I had done. He came with us. I had seen for 2 or 3 days that there was a cobweb very wide with a huge spider, which Rano hadn't noticed. She was too busy watching for my sins in polishing the mirror. "Well, Rano, what about that?" I asked. "That seems to me to be worse than a smudgy mirror." She flew into a rage and Baba laughed. It was a real triumph for me. "That Margaret," Rano fumed. "She's worse than Norina." Margaret and Rano's differences were put aside. Later, in the communal sisterhood of love for their master, as Margaret related, later we always got on. I loved Rano very much. She had a sense of humor, and her love for Baba was deep, very deep. The heat in Lahore. Maybe someone else should read.
Okay. Ralph, are you there? I don't think
I
he's
guess
there.
I guess you're going to have to read, Tina, much to your dismay.
Okay. The heat in Lahore was intense, 109 degrees or more, and the men Mandali became ill from it. Vishnu and Kalamama had a fever, and Dr. Ghani said he could not stand it any longer and begged to be sent back to Lanavla, which Baba allowed. On 22nd August, Nilu wrote to Adi Sr. in Ahmednagar. "It is like Dante's Inferno here. Why has Baba chosen this place? No one knows. My argument is that for our sins, which we are still left, are to be burned up here. I think that must be the only reason. Despite the heat, twice a day, Baba walked in the sun between his house and that of the Mandali. Then they went must hunting in town. The woman put a damp towel over his umbrella, but even so, the umbrella and Baba's head got scorched. Baba did not restrict himself. On July 15th, he left Lahore to travel in the searing heat for 2 weeks. And looking for more musts, he went to Peshawar. Also on 2nd August for 4 days. Duncan has described this appearance and the Mandali after one such must hunt. You see, Baba and 3 or 4 disciples set out on a must tour, looking strong and fresh. And when they enter the garden gate 2 or 3 weeks later, you go to welcome them back and help bring their luggage into the house. You see they are tired, unshaven faces, and Baba's face with tired eyes, Baba's eyes. You see their clothes. Baba's clothes too, dirty, with dirt worked into the fabric of the cloth. And fixed there by days of perspiration. And you see where their clothes are torn. Memorials, little outer signs of the weird days and nights, working and moving, moving and working, moving and working, days and nights, when the master submits to himself to the sordid limits of physical existence. Wayfarers, page 162. During this period, the Allies landed in Sicily on 10th July and controlled the island in a month. Mussolini resigned after 21 years as a fascist dictator. The Russians launched their first summer offensive and continuing the slow process of pushing back the Nazis in Germany to Germany. The RAF was turning Germany's major cities into rubble, and Germany's U-2 boats were lost in the Battle of the Atlantic. Meanwhile, because of the heat, the women were shut inside the house all day. They did a bit of gardening in the mornings, but by 10 o'clock, it was so hot that they went inside. At night, the heat made it difficult to sleep. The house had a terrace on the roof, where the women took their small bedding rolls. There was no breeze, but a cross draft blew across roof from the doorway. Mani quickly claimed a spot. And with the others, fighting for places near to the door. Mehera related, it was so hot, no air, no breeze, no sandstorms, that at night we all went up to the roof terrace. We took our bedding and carpets, thinking that the roof would offer some breeze, but the roof was so hot from the sun beating down all day. When we lay over the beddings, our backs would get so hot we had to turn over.
Tina, would you like me to take us back to the barn?
Okay.
There was no breeze at all. This is page 227, by the way. You could see the sky, but that was the only difference from being inside. Someone suggested pouring water on the floor to cool it down, but no one wanted to trudge upstairs with buckets of water to do it. Margaret, too, slept on the roof with her bedding. When she got up in the morning, she sat up and did exercises in bed. Vultures were hovering over an adjacent field where dead or dying animals were taken, and every evening they roosted on a nearby tree. I hope the vultures realize that we are alive and not dead up here, Margaret deadpanned. Occasionally, They went for walks in the evenings. Once Baba took them behind their bungalow to a large hotel built on a rock. Keki Desai's Keki Desai's cousin, a local businessman named Homi Desai, who had helped make their arrangements, came in his car every morning, every evening to take them for a drive or to the movies at the Rivoli Theater. The sidebar says the movies the women saw with Baba in Lahore included Queen Christina with Greta Garbo, Romeo and Juliet with Norma Shearer, Leslie Howard, John Barrymore, and Basil Rathbone, which Mara loved, even though it is an abbreviated version. This Land Is Mine with Charles Laughton and Maureen O'Hara, the story of a timid schoolteacher who becomes a hero when his country is overrun by the Nazis, and Hold Back the Dawn, a romantic tearjerker starring Charles Boyer and Olivia de Havilland. Mara enjoyed the Hindi film Ram Rajya, Ram Rajya, which means Ram's reign. Reign is like Reign. But she thought Bharat Milap was better.
I'll go
Only,
back.
okay.
I pressed the wrong button.
Okay.
Do you
So
remember where you were?
here we, thank you, Tina. Here we are. After a while, Baba said, it's not good to bother him all the time. Him being Homi Desai, who came every evening in his car to take them for a drive or to the movies. So it's not good to bother him all the time, Baba said. Besides, we're not free to go when we like, since he has to work. It's better if we're independent. So a second-hand horse-drawn Victoria carriage was purchased. It was pulled by a strong, tall, docile, slate-colored mare. Walu cut grass for the horse, so they did not have to buy any. Baba used to take us for pictures, movies, in the Victoria, Mara said. Only 4 persons could fit in the carriage, so they took turns going. First Mani and Mara, and then Kitty and Rano, with Baba and Mara. Oh, sorry. First Mani and Meru, and then Kitty and Rano, with Baba and Mara. The carriage was covered and had 2 seats for 2 people each, but Mani and Meru vied for the best seat next to the driver on top, where they had a clear view. It was hot and sunny while going, but returning in the evening was cool and pleasant in the open air. Once, when the driver brought them to the portico of their bungalow at a trot, he stopped with a jerk, and either Mani or Meru almost fell over the horse. The driver was old, and they were told later that he could not see too well at night. We don't know how he ever brought us home safely, Mara said. There were no lights on the main road, but not by our house. There were lights on the main road, but not by our house. I think the horse knew her way and brought us safely home. The women in the other bungalow were not allowed to take walks or to come on most of the outings to the movies. The films were in English anyway, which most of the women in the other bungalow did not know. Baba, however, did permit them to go to some of the better English films and to a few Hindi movies, though they were to come separately and were not to see Baba. For most of the time, the women in the other house were completely isolated from Baba and restricted to their compound, except for Irene, the only Westerner. And here we get to the bottom of 227. So next week.
Yes, we'll take up on 228.
Very good. I'll stop the recording.